Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. And when I was a kid, I got road raged a couple of times. People got mad at me and road raged at me. And I don't remember if they were justified or not. And probably they were at least a little. I mean, I'm saying road rage is not a good idea. What I'm saying is they probably had a legitimate reason to be mad. I did stupid things back then, usually not intentionally, but you know, you're still learning when you're a kid to see the road and stuff. And from time to time, people would pull up alongside me or behind me and they'd lay on the horn. And I get that. That's fine. You just get it out of your system. Or if they were really mad, maybe they'd pull up alongside me and look over at me until I'm looking, and then boom, here it comes. That's the finger. That's right. I just gave you the finger. Think about what that means, buddy. That's how mad I am at you. And it's a really impotent gesture, but also, again, I can be like, man, there it is. That's the finger. Now I feel bad. You got me. And then you diffuse the situation and everybody just moves on, right? But every now and then, including a couple times when I was young, I got road raged where somebody was like, honking and the finger are not enough. You inconvenienced me over the course of one intersection. I'm going to inconvenience you over the course of the next 10 miles. And then they just change the way they drive. They drive erratically. They do stupid stuff that raises the danger percentages for them, for other people, for that poor mom in the minivan over there who doesn't have anything to do with anything. And it's just sort of a stupid, desperate, weird way to conduct your business on the road, right? But each of those things, from understandable offendedness to, okay, all right, yeah, you're gesticulating at me, to the full-on road rage thing, they all demonstrate a different degree of anger and erratic response. And the longer it goes on, the more erratic it appears to be. Well, likewise, we run into a situation here in the book of Ezra where there is an offended party. And at the most basic level, as you and I have discussed, I kind of get why the party is offended, but then they flip into road rage mode and is kind of tells a story. It paints a picture of who they've been all along, and it's not a very flattering picture. Here's what I mean. Ezra 4, Zerubbabel and the Jewish exiles have returned. They are rebuilding the temple with the full blessing and resources of the crown. Cyrus the Great has totally signed off on this. He's even published a decree saying this is the real deal. So they're working on it, and then a bunch of hill people, a bunch of people from maybe the northern 10 tribes of the long since defunct kingdom of Israel that got defeated by the Assyrians long ago at this point. I mean, we're talking like as long ago as colonial times in America. This is a long time ago, but they're still around. Some of them have migrated back. Others were left behind about 50 or 60 years earlier by Nebuchadnezzar. And for whatever reason, whether it's malicious or just covering their own butts, they want to try to jump in with this thing. And as we read, the leaders of the Jewish exiles are like, no, you have no part in this thing. And we speculated about a bunch of reasons why that might be. And then Ezra takes us to a really interesting place as we work forward in chapter 4. It is understandable that these hill people, the people who wanted to jump in with the rebuilding thing but weren't allowed to, it's understandable that they were offended by, metaphorically, the way the Jewish exiles who were rebuilding this thing were driving. It's understandable that they'd want to pull up alongside and lay on the horn once and be like, we didn't like your answer. We wanted to help rebuild. Or maybe even pull up alongside and wait for eye contact and roll down the window and then real quick be like, yeah, there you go, sucker. It's the finger. Dwell on that and then peel out real quick. I get it, but it gets weird because this goes into a full-on road rage situation as Ezra 4 unfolds, as they apparently continue to follow around the Jewish people and harass them over the course of literally the next not 20 years, not 30 years, not 40 years, but at least 50 plus years, probably longer than that. So in Ezra chapter 4, it says that this was an issue during the reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, and down to the reign of Darius, king of Persia. But then we get a historical aside through the rest of chapter 4, because remember, Ezra is writing way after the event so that he's describing here in the first part of his book. And it says, starting in verse 6, at the beginning of the reign of Xerxes, so now we're all the way up to 486 BC, they lodged an accusation, these are the offended road ragey people, against the people of Judah and Jerusalem. And in the days of Artaxerxes. So now we're at least in 465 BC, a full, what are we at now, 70 years later? And in the days of Artaxerxes, king of Persia and a bunch of other places, the rest of these associates wrote a letter to Artaxerxes. The letter was written in Aramaic and in the Aramaic language, and it said something like this. The commanding officer and some other people, together with the rest of their associates, the judges, and the officials and men from a bunch of different places. This is the copy of the letter that they sent Artaxerxes. From your servants, the men of Trans-Euphrates. That's the name of the province where all of the Jerusalem stuff was happening. The king should know that the Jews who came up to us from you have gone to Jerusalem and are rebuilding that rebellious and wicked city. They're restoring the walls and repairing the foundations. Furthermore, the king should know that if this city is built and its walls are restored, no more taxes, tribute, or duty will be paid, and the royal revenues will suffer. Now, since we're under obligation to the palace, and it's not proper for us to see the king dishonored, we're sending this message to inform the king so that a search may be made in the archives of your predecessors. In these records, you'll find that this city is a rebellious city, troublesome to kings and provinces, a place of rebellion from ancient times. This is why this city was destroyed. We inform the king that if this city is built and its walls are restored, you will be left with nothing in Trans-Euphrates. Okay, couple of notes on this. One, you got to admit they have a point. It's true to some level. Jerusalem has been a rebellious city. Read 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. The kings of Jerusalem were weird and goofy in their international dealings when they made deals with people involving tribute. Sometimes they would try to weasel out of those promises they had made. And the Bible isn't shy. The prophets are not shy about saying, oh, those kind of shenanigans are kind of how you got here. You trusted your very feeble negotiating and diplomatic abilities over the promises of God, and then you ended up in captivity. So the letter has a point. What the letter doesn't speak to at all is the fact that the first king of Persia, Cyrus the Great, or the Persian Empire that is, said that all this stuff was supposed to happen, and then his next significant successor, Darius the First, signed off on all of that as well. And so then we get a whole account through the rest of chapter 4 about how the Artaxerxes thing works out. And we see that the royal officials did do some digging around, and they're like, oh yeah, these people are right. These Jerusalem types, they are difficult. And it says, as soon as a copy of the letter of King Artaxerxes was read to Rehum and Shimshai, the secretaries and their associates, they went immediately to the Jews in Jerusalem and compelled them by force to stop. Thus, the work on the house of God in Jerusalem came to a standstill until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. Now, that last line of chapter 4 is why chapter 4 is so confusing. Because Ezra is using that historical aside to say there was resistance during Cyrus, but we got past it. There was resistance during Darius, and more on how we got past that in a minute. But just in case you might imagine that this was a honk or a middle finger at a traffic light for just a fleeting moment, no. This is a full-on historical road rage incident, my friends. They kept pounding this stuff all the way into the reign of Xerxes and Artaxerxes, decades after the fact. But then in Ezra chapter 4, Ezra's basically like, but anyways, all of that history aside, let's go back to Darius, and let me finish explaining how the work on the temple got suspended until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. And then in chapter 5, he picks up and explains how all of that came together. But this is another one of those really exciting, really fun places where extra-biblical history overlaps so beautifully and interestingly with the Bible, because we're going to learn things through looking at extra-biblical history about the motivations Darius had in this situation that are going to explain why Darius behaved the way he did in Ezra chapter 5. And we're going to look at all of that next time around. Final thought. I want to say thanks as always to everybody who makes this podcast happen by supporting it at patreon.com/the TMBH or in other ways, the tmbh.com/support describes all of that. I'm so thankful to you because I love working on this stuff. I love that you have an appetite for it too. And seriously, it just wouldn't be a thing if it weren't for those of you who make it go. So thank you so much for that. I support a bunch of stuff I believe in around the internet through Patreon as well. And what I have noticed is that when my card that I have on file with them expires, they don't send me an email. And every now and then I just hear from those creators and they're like, hey, some of you, it looks like your cards have expired here over the last few months. Got a report from Patreon. Thought I'd let you know. So I went and checked that again on mine. And sure enough, looks like the same is happening there. So, hey, no big deal either way. I'm super grateful for the help, but it looks like there may be some of you who think or have it set up to be supporting the program, but it might be that cards expire like mine from time to time. Was that weird? Did I make it weird? I didn't want it to be weird. The point is, I'm just so dang grateful to all of you, and I love that we get to do this together, and I'm going to show myself the exit right now. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.